Hey, what's going on, guys? I wanted to make a video today, kind of just giving you guys my thoughts and experiences on what it's like to tow with a Toyota Tacoma. This is my 2019 TRD off-road, and I'll be towing this, my 2015 Airstream 16-foot Bambi. It has a gross vehicle weight of about 3,500 pounds. Empty, it's about 3,000 with batteries and tanks. And over here we've got a hitch weight of, I think, 430 pounds according to the factory. And the freshwater tank that sits in between the axle and the ball is about half full, so there's probably about 10 gallons in there. So split that between the axle and the hitch, so we'll call it 5 gallons times 8 is what, 40 gallons. So I'm going to estimate about 470 pounds on the ball. Overall, I would say, before we get into it, I haven't been super impressed with this vehicle as a tow vehicle. It does seem to struggle quite a bit, despite towing less than, or right around half of its rated tow capacity. I don't use any weight distributing hitch or anything like that, but sway actually really hasn't been a problem with this trailer. It tows really nicely. So let's get into it. I kind of want to show you guys first off, when I hitch up, what kind of squat we're looking at. In the bed right now, there's a few things, not much. I have a propane tank over there and a little fire pit, and then this cargo box that works really well for camping, but there's only a couple things in there. So I'm going to estimate less than 100 pounds sitting in the bed right now. So let's kind of get into it and give you guys some numbers. Unfortunately, I didn't have a measuring tape handy, so for the moment I'll just have to visually show you guys what dropping about 470 pounds on the ball looks like. Not to fear though, near the end of this video, when I'm home, I'll get some actual numbers to share. I'm hooking up the trailer using the Tacoma's factory 7-pin connector. Unfortunately, this model does not come with an integrated brake controller. To get around that, I'm using a Taconcha Prodigy RF mounted to the frame. Brake gain and manual engagement are handled with a wireless transmitter in the cab. It works really well. I keep mine permanently mounted using some big U-bolts and a custom aluminum adapter plate. I just didn't like the idea of drilling into my trailer frame. This setup also has the advantage of making the trailer towable by any vehicle with a 7-pin connector and the appropriate capacity. If anyone would like to know more about this unit, I'll place a link below. Because this truck has a relatively short wheelbase and I'm towing something relatively compact, slow speed maneuverability is excellent. Taking even sharp turns in tight campsites is generally not a problem. Furthermore, the truck's excellent articulation makes entering and exiting grades generally effortless. I wanted to get cameras going on this trip because of our route. We'll be starting in Winthrop, Washington, that sits at 1,700 feet. And by the way, if you ever want to check out a pretty cool town, you should stop by. According to Wikipedia, the town hasn't really grown since the 40s, holding steady at just shy of 400 residents and has a serious Old West vibe. Anyway, we'll be heading from here up to about 5,500 feet as we cross the Cascade Mountains and then back down to sea level in Seattle. The whole trip should be just over 200 miles. So right now I'm filling up before we have a few hundred miles to trailer. I'm going to do the TFL method, which is fill up, wait 30 seconds for the foam to die down, then top off, and then see what kind of mileage we're looking at to fill up. Alright, I'll reset the trip meter. So I thought here was a good place to pick up. I wanted to give you guys a driver's point of view as we pull back on the highway. Sadly, I don't know the exact grade here, but the Tacoma's pitch indicator keeps bouncing around between 0 and 5%. As I pull back on the road, I'll pretty much be burying the accelerator. Here we go. And this is about the point we reach the high point of the trip. For the next several miles, we've got a combination of ups and downs before getting into a long descent. I thought I'd just leave the camera rolling for a while so you guys can get an idea of how the truck tows under those conditions. I've also got the ECT power button pressed. This theoretically changes shift points and Toyota recommends it when towing. But truth being told, I find there's little difference with or without it. Now we're getting into some serious downhill action. For this section, I've got the cruise control set at 55 and we'll let the transmission do its best to maintain that. From past experience, it actually does pretty well. And that will conclude the highly mountainous part of this trip. Once we reach Diablo Lake, which is a really picturesque place in the Cascades, the road just gets slightly windy with just a minimal downhill grade as we head towards I-5, which hugs the coast and brings us back down to the Seattle metro area. Before we get too close to civilization again, I thought I'd have my girlfriend drive for a minute while I try and grab a 0 to 60 time with 3,500 pounds behind us. Ready? Go. 13.46. An empty Tacoma will do this in 7.7 seconds. This means with our loaded truck taking 13.5, we've increased our 0 to 60 time by 75%. Before we get fully leveled out on the freeway, I thought I'd summarize how I thought the truck did. I've always been a bit disappointed with uphill performance. It needs to rev a lot to maintain freeway speeds on mild 1 or 2% grades. I've driven my dad's 3.5 EcoBoost powered F-150 pulling his 7,000 pound trailer, and that truck barely flinched under similar situations. I know that's not a fair comparison, but I just want to drive home the point that these mid-sized trucks really aren't built for towing, and that it's quite a bit more than a little difference when you move up a size class. On the other hand, downhill performance is surprisingly good. Even with the weight behind us, the automatic transmission does a nice job of grade shifting without letting speed build up. You'll have to tap the brakes from time to time, but for the most part, the truck does the work. Finally, the vehicle's ride is actually improved with that extra weight on the rear axle. If anyone has driven a current gen and then compared it to a modern full-size, you'll know that the Tacoma's ride is pretty harsh. but while towing, it's nicely mellowed. Before we finish up, here's a couple dash shots of how the truck runs on some relatively flat freeway. As we get back into Seattle, we need to do a little mileage check. I also wanted to get an official weight at the scale, but unfortunately I couldn't get the automated scale to work, and I didn't feel like waiting out the argument between the crack enthusiast and the cashier inside. So I guess it's just the mileage at the pump. Okay guys, we went 203.1 miles and we used 16.113 gallons. 12.60 miles per gallon, towing, I don't know, somewhere between 3,000 and 3,500 pounds, up and down a mountain, and then a little bit on a freeway. Lastly, here's that squat measurement I missed at the beginning. So we're looking about 34.5 right now loaded. Kind of have to do this backwards. We were at 34.5 before, and now we're at 35.5. Is that really only an inch? I'll have to review the tape, but it sounds like only an inch. It's not too bad.